It was a cold morning in Arlington, Virginia. The kind of morning where even the air feels like it's holding its breath. Among the rows of polished white headstones at Arlington National Cemetery, a woman in a tailored navy coat moved slowly, each step deliberate. Her name was Eleanor Bishop, Billionaire, founder of Bishop Tech, a woman who had built an empire of artificial intelligence with nothing but vision, ruthlessness, and control. She was there to visit the grave of her only son, Miles Bishop. He died in a helicopter crash 7 months earlier. An accident that shattered more than just the future of a trillion-dollar legacy. It shattered the last piece of humanity Eleanor had left. As she placed a single rose on the marble headstone, she heard the quiet crunch of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw a woman she didn't recognize. Tall, poised, skin like caramel, eyes steady. A young black woman holding the hand of a 5-year-old boy. The boy's eyes, they were the same piercing gray as Miles. "I'm sorry to intrude," the woman said, voice trembling but proud. "My name is Naomi Carter, and this is Jaden, your grandson." The silence that followed was deafening. It wasn't just a statement, it was a detonation. Eleanor, a woman who had buried her son with the belief that his legacy died with him, was now face to face with a truth she couldn't control. What came next would shake the foundations of power, race, inheritance, and the true meaning of family in America. Because Naomi wasn't just a woman with a child. She was a storm Eleanor never saw coming. And Jaden? He wasn't just any boy. He was the rightful heir to one of the most powerful tech legacies in the United States, and his very existence would bring a billion-dollar empire to its knees. Stay with me. This story, this revelation, is only just beginning. The Bishop name didn't just represent money. It represented power. From Silicon Valley to Capitol Hill, the Bishop family was synonymous with innovation, strategy, and dominance in the tech world. Bishop Tech, founded by Eleanor Bishop in the early 1990s, had become a household name, pioneering AI-driven logistics, predictive algorithms, and national security software used by multiple U.S. government agencies. But Eleanor wasn't just a tech visionary. She was a queen-maker. And her only son, Miles Bishop, was destined to inherit her digital throne. At 32, Miles had already broken records. A Harvard graduate at 21, MIT researcher by 23. He developed Orion, the AI framework that prevented a multi-billion-dollar cyber attack on the New York Stock Exchange in 2021. Tech magazines called him the mind of the century. Investors bet on him, governments trusted him, and Eleanor, she controlled him. To the outside world, the Bishop dynasty was bulletproof, unstoppable. Until the morning of June 4th. Miles was scheduled to speak at a cybersecurity summit in Austin, Texas. His private helicopter, en route from a Bishop Tech development lab, disappeared from radar at 6:42 a.m. The wreckage was discovered hours later in the Guadalupe Mountains. No survivors. News broke like wildfire. The world mourned a genius. Eleanor issued a public statement within 2 hours. Calm, composed, almost robotic. She spoke of legacy, of leadership, of the need to move forward. But what she didn't say was that she hadn't shed a single tear. Because Eleanor Bishop didn't cry. She managed loss the way she managed mergers, with calculation, not emotion. Within a week, she had Miles' estate locked down, his work files sealed, and his funeral orchestrated to military precision. No room for questions. No time for rumors. There were whispers, of course. Some said Miles had been distant in the weeks before the crash. That he'd started challenging Eleanor's decisions, questioning the moral path of Bishop Tech. Others believed he was planning to step away from the company altogether, to start something new. But Eleanor denied it all. In her mind, the story was complete. Tragic, yes, but closed. Until Naomi Carter and that little boy shattered the narrative with 5 simple words. "This is your grandson, ma'am." And just like that, the story Eleanor thought she had written was about to be rewritten, one truth at a time. Naomi Carter didn't come from privilege. She didn't attend Ivy League schools or grow up in a smart home with biometric locks and 7-figure inheritance papers waiting in the drawer. She was raised in the heart of Houston, Texas. Her mother, a nurse. Her father, a welder. Both worked long hours just to keep the lights on and food on the table. But what they lacked in wealth, they made up for in grit, and in the unwavering belief that knowledge was power. Naomi was the kind of girl who fixed her school's computer lab when she was 14. By 19, she was running circles around cybersecurity majors twice her age. Her path wasn't paved. She hacked it herself, one internship, one scholarship, one sleepless night at a time. That's how she ended up at Bishop Tech. It was supposed to be just another job. Contract-based. Quiet. Naomi was hired to analyze a breach in Bishop Tech's internal firewall, one that had gone unnoticed by their own top-tier team. She found it in 48 hours. Miles Bishop noticed. At first, it was professional. Late-night Slack messages, code reviews, mutual admiration for clean architecture and ethical AI debates. But soon, it became something else. Their connection was unexpected, but undeniable. Naomi challenged him. She didn't care about his last name or his net worth. She cared about his heart, and the fact that he listened when she spoke. They spent weekends in hidden cabins outside Austin, mornings at greasy spoon diners talking about the future. He told her he wanted to build AI that couldn't be manipulated. That power needed boundaries. That Bishop Tech had become something he no longer recognized. And he told her he loved her. Naomi got pregnant 7 months before the crash. She never asked for anything. No money, no title, no spotlight. Miles promised they'd make it right. He had written a private memorandum naming Naomi and their unborn child as his next of kin. He told her to wait until he returned from that final trip, but he never came back. And when Naomi reached out to Bishop Tech afterward, she was ignored, dismissed, silenced. So she stayed quiet, for a while. She raised Jaden in a modest apartment, teaching him about strength, resilience, and who his father really was. But now, she wasn't quiet anymore. Because Jaden deserved more than memories and whispers. He deserved the truth. And Naomi Carter was ready to speak it. Eleanor Bishop had never been a woman who liked surprises. So when Naomi Carter showed up at her son's grave claiming to be the mother of his child, Eleanor didn't react with tears or trembling hands. She reacted like a CEO. Sharp, clinical, and cold. 2 days later, Naomi received an invitation. Not from a lawyer, not from a court, but from Eleanor herself. The meeting took place at the Bishop Tech Executive Penthouse in downtown D.C., 35 floors above the city skyline. Glass walls. Chrome finish. Not a single photo of Miles in sight. Eleanor entered the room like a winter storm. Calm on the outside, deadly underneath. She didn't waste time. "Let's not play games, Ms. Carter," she said, lowering herself into a leather chair across from Naomi. "If that boy is who you say he is, let's prove it. One DNA test. Confidential. Immediate." Naomi didn't blink. "I came prepared," she said, placing a sealed folder on the table. "Test results. Conducted last week. Chain of custody verified by 2 independent labs." Eleanor opened it. "Read it." Pause. Her fingers tightened just slightly on the edge of the document. Miles Bishop. 99.9987% biological match to Jaden Carter. Eleanor didn't argue. She didn't deny. She simply reached into her purse, pulled out a blank checkbook, and started writing. "I'm offering you $1 million, she said, her voice even. "You leave the state. Change your name. Cut ties completely. No press, no drama. Your son will be well provided for. But he will not carry the Bishop name." Naomi stared at her. There was no anger in her eyes. No fear. Just clarity. She leaned forward slowly. "With all due respect," Naomi said, her voice low, deliberate, "I don't want your money. I want what's right." Eleanor's lips tightened. "What's right is that you walk away and keep your dignity intact." Naomi smiled. Not the smile of someone intimidated, but the smile of someone holding a stronger hand. "My dignity," she said, "is raising a good boy, a kind boy, the kind of son Miles would have been proud of." And then, quietly, she reached into her own bag and pulled out a copy of the handwritten memorandum. Miles' handwriting. His seal. His words. "If anything happens to me, Jaden Carter is my heir." Eleanor didn't flinch, but something shifted behind her eyes. For the first time, perhaps in decades, she wasn't in control. And she knew it. Eleanor Bishop didn't take public fights. She handled things the Bishop way, behind closed doors, through paper trails, court filings, and whispered favors owed by powerful men in expensive suits. So when Naomi Carter refused a check and walked out of that glass tower with her head held high, Eleanor didn't chase her. She didn't yell. She simply made a call. Within 24 hours, Bishop Tech's legal team had filed a petition to disqualify Jaden Carter from any inheritance claim, citing lack of legal paternity recognition and absence of documented commitment. But Eleanor hadn't anticipated one thing. Naomi wasn't alone. She had been quiet for 5 years, yes, but not idle. She consulted with civil rights attorney Dean Holloway, a man with a reputation for turning corporate secrets into courtroom disasters. Dean had gone toe-to-toe with oil companies, tech giants, even a sitting senator. And now, he was representing Naomi pro bono. Their response was immediate. Filed under Virginia's Equity Inheritance Code, Naomi's case not only affirmed Jaden's biological right, but challenged the constitutionality of denying a child born out of wedlock from legacy entitlement, when written proof and DNA evidence existed. The court date was set in under 2 weeks. While the media had yet to catch wind, within legal circles, whispers started spreading. An heir to Bishop Tech? A memo from Miles? A civil rights case with nationwide implications? But Eleanor moved first. She quietly submitted a motion to have all proceedings sealed. Judge only, no media, no public access. It worked, at least temporarily, until Holloway made his move. He released a 30-second hospital video from Naomi's private archive. In it, a tired but beaming Miles holds newborn Jaden in his arms. His voice, barely above a whisper, says, "If anything ever happens to me, I want the world to know, this is my son. This is my legacy." The clip went viral in under an hour. #BishopBaby trended nationwide. The public, once enamored with Eleanor Bishop's iron image, now saw cracks. A grandmother trying to erase her own flesh and blood. A woman willing to pay for silence, but not embrace truth. And while Eleanor scrambled to contain the fallout, board members started asking questions. Shareholders raised concerns. Contracts were reviewed. Naomi never raised her voice. She didn't need to. She let the truth and the law do the talking. And the war that Eleanor thought she could win in silence was now echoing louder than she ever expected. The video hit the internet like a thunderclap. 30 seconds. That's all it took. 30 seconds of a man the world revered, Miles Bishop, cradling a newborn, whispering a truth that unraveled 5 years of silence. And just like that, the myth of control Eleanor Bishop had cultivated for 3 decades began to fracture. News outlets scrambled. CNN, MSNBC, Tech Insider. Even morning shows like Good Morning America ran segments on the lost Bishop heir. Bloggers and TikTok creators dissected the video frame by frame, quoting Miles' last words like scripture, "This is my legacy." Eleanor's pristine image, once built on power, precision, and innovation, was now splashed across headlines with phrases like Bishopgate and the grandmother who tried to erase her grandson. The board of Bishop Tech held an emergency meeting. Several major shareholders called for transparency, citing moral responsibility and public trust. A Fortune 500 company can weather many storms, but not one where the founder is publicly accused of denying a child his rightful name, bloodline, and future. Eleanor, ever the strategist, attempted damage control. She held a press conference at Bishop Tech HQ, her first in nearly a year. Wearing her signature gray suit and pearls, she stepped up to the podium, cameras clicking like gunfire. "My son was a visionary," she began. "And like any mother, I only want to protect what he built." But before she could finish, a voice rang out from the back of the room. "Is that why you offered his child $1 million to disappear?" Gasps filled the room. It was Naomi. She hadn't planned to be there. But she came anyway, dressed in navy blue, standing tall, holding a framed photo of Miles and baby Jaden. A photo that hadn't yet gone public, but would, if it needed to. Reporters swarmed. Questions flew. "Is this true, Ms. Carter? Did you take the money? What's your message to Eleanor Bishop?" Naomi didn't flinch. She simply raised the photo and said, This is the only truth that matters." Then she walked out, and the internet did the rest. Clips from the press conference went viral. Again. #ProtectJayden, #JusticeForMiles, and #NoMoreSilence dominated every platform. Within days, Bishop Tech stock dipped 17%. Sponsors and vendors began to distance themselves. The woman who once controlled Washington lobbyists and Silicon Valley kings now couldn't control the narrative. Because the world wasn't just watching anymore. It was choosing sides. And for the first time, Eleanor Bishop wasn't on the winning one. In every family built on legacy, there's a secret buried deep enough to never be found, until someone starts digging. And in the Bishop family, that secret had a name. Jessica. Jessica Bishop was Eleanor's younger sister. Brilliant, rebellious, and 10 years her junior. She had once been the original heir to the Bishop Tech dream. She helped write the company's earliest code, drawing algorithms on napkins in college bars while Eleanor pitched investors in glass conference rooms. But Jessica made one mistake, as Eleanor called it. She fell in love with the wrong man. Not a tech mogul. Not a venture capitalist. A history teacher. And when Jessica got pregnant, Eleanor gave her an ultimatum. Give up the child, or give up the company. Jessica chose love. And for that, she was erased. Eleanor rewrote the family's narrative. She told the press Jessica had moved abroad. Told shareholders the company had restructured. And when Jessica died in a car accident just 2 years later, Eleanor adopted her son, Miles, without ever revealing the truth. To the world, Miles Bishop was Eleanor's biological son. To Eleanor, he was the perfect solution. A brilliant, moldable child who could carry the Bishop name and never know how tightly the chains were wrapped around him. Until now. Because Naomi had uncovered it. It started with a genealogy search, just trying to trace any medical history for Jayden's safety. But what Naomi found was a copy of Jessica Bishop's death certificate. And Miles listed not as her nephew, but as her son. At first, she didn't understand the weight of it. But Holloway did. "This changes everything," he told her. "It means Miles wasn't just a tech prodigy. He was the product of a legacy Eleanor tried to destroy. And Jayden? He wasn't just Eleanor's grandson by blood. He was the last living descendant of the true Bishop line. The one Eleanor tried to bury with lies and legal contracts. That truth, now documented, confirmed, and in the hands of Naomi's legal team, wasn't just a scandal. It was leverage. Because if the world knew that Eleanor Bishop had built her empire on deception, then the question wouldn't be whether Jayden deserved the Bishop name. It would be whether Eleanor ever had a right to claim it at all. Miles Bishop didn't just dream in lines of code. He dreamed of a world where artificial intelligence didn't inherit the biases of the people who created it. A world where technology lifted everyone, not just the powerful. It was the one thing he and Naomi spoke about for hours, long before Jayden was born. That dream had a name. Project Aegis. Tucked away in an encrypted external server, buried beneath miles of Bishop Tech architecture, Miles had left it unfinished. It wasn't a product. It wasn't ready for market. It was an idea, a prototype AI framework designed to detect, flag, and neutralize biased data patterns in real time. Race, gender, economic status, religion. Aegis was designed to see what humans refuse to admit. That data, like people, carried prejudice. And Miles was determined to build something better. When Naomi presented Project Aegis at a public symposium on ethical tech hosted at Georgetown University, the world wasn't expecting it. She walked onto the stage, Jayden holding her hand, and stood before a sea of industry leaders, reporters, and skeptical academics. Behind her, a single phrase appeared on the screen. Built to protect what we ignore. Naomi didn't claim to be a tech visionary. She simply told the truth. That her late partner left behind something the world needed. That Aegis wasn't just about innovation. It was about responsibility. And that Bishop Tech had chosen to bury it, afraid of what it might expose. Then, in a moment that would replay on every major news outlet for the next week, Naomi handed the microphone to her son. Jayden, just 5 years old, stood on a stool and pressed the enter key. Aegis came to life on screen. An animated demo showing how the system flagged subtle racial discrimination in hiring algorithms and adjusted them in real time. The audience sat in stunned silence. and then erupted in applause. The headline the next morning was simple: "The Bishop Legacy Lives in the Hands of a Child." Tech journals called it the most important moment in AI since autonomous learning. Parents called it hope. And for Eleanor Bishop, it was checkmate. Because in one presentation, Naomi didn't just unveil Miles' final work. She reclaimed it. For him. For Jaden. And for every voice that had ever been silenced by a system designed to overlook them. Overnight, Jaden Carter became a name the world wouldn't forget. He wasn't just the child of a fallen tech genius. He was the boy who had awakened an industry. Clips of Jaden pressing that enter key on stage spread across the internet like wildfire. By morning, his wide eyes and quiet confidence had become the face of a movement. He trended on Twitter, TikTok, and even made the cover of Time Kids, under the headline, "The Child Who Challenged the Algorithm." For tech giants, Jaden represented disruption. For classrooms, he became inspiration. And for millions of kids who had never seen someone like them at the center of innovation, he became hope. Requests poured in from around the country. Interviews, keynotes, endorsements. Offers Naomi politely declined. She wasn't interested in turning her son into a mascot. She was raising a child, not a brand. Still, Jaden's presence couldn't be ignored. At age 5, he was invited to tour MIT's AI lab. At 6, he was given an honorary membership to the National Youth STEM Collective. His drawings of robots that tell the truth were featured in the Smithsonian's Future of Tech exhibit. But the real shift wasn't in headlines. It was in perception. Tech panels that once overlooked bias now opened with talks on digital ethics. Companies began re-evaluating their algorithms. And in a quiet office at Bishop Tech's headquarters, an intern taped Jaden's photo above her monitor, a silent reminder of what code should serve. Meanwhile, Eleanor Bishop remained silent. The world was no longer asking her opinion. They were listening to Jaden. Not because he had the answers, but because, somehow, he had become the question. What kind of future are we building, and who are we building it for? He was no longer just a boy caught in a battle of legacy. He was the beginning of a new one. The courtroom was silent. Not tense. Not loud. Silent, like the air itself was waiting for permission to exhale. The case of Carter v. Bishop Tech Holdings had captured national attention. It was no longer just a custody dispute or an inheritance battle. It was a referendum on legacy, on race, on power, and what it truly meant to belong. Judge Ramona Ellis, respected, sharp, and known for her no-nonsense demeanor, had reviewed the facts over 5 grueling weeks. DNA proof, Miles' memorandum, the now famous hospital video, and the legal documents proving Eleanor had knowingly suppressed the child's rights. When she finally returned to the bench, every reporter in the room lifted a pen. Naomi sat calm, her hand gently resting on Jaden's shoulder. Eleanor stared ahead, stone-faced. Her legal team flanked beside her like armor. The judge looked down at the docket, then up at the courtroom. "The evidence is clear," she began. "Jaden Carter is the biological and legal son of Miles Bishop. More importantly, he is the sole direct descendant of Jessica Bishop, whose contributions to Bishop Tech have been historically buried, but legally undeniable." She paused. In the interest of justice and ethical precedent, this court rules that Jaden Carter is the rightful heir to the Bishop estate, including all intellectual property tied to Project Aegis and its future development. Gasps filled the room. Then came the final blow. Effective immediately, Bishop Tech shall establish a joint board of oversight to implement Project Aegis under the guidance of a legal guardian representing Jaden's interests. That guardian will be Naomi Carter. Eleanor's breath caught. She didn't protest. She didn't speak. She simply folded her hands in her lap. Tight, white-knuckled, defeated. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed Naomi as she exited. But she didn't stop. She didn't pose. She only looked down at her son and said, "Let's go home, baby. We've got work to do." And in that moment, the gavel didn't just deliver justice. It rewrote the rules. Hospitals have a way of humbling even the most powerful. The corridors smell like antiseptic and old coffee. The walls are quiet, sterile. There are no stock tickers here. No boardrooms. Just monitors that beep and hearts that slow. Eleanor Bishop lay in room 602 of St. Agnes Medical Center, her skin pale, her frame thinner than the last time Naomi saw her. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Diagnosed shortly after the trial. Terminal. She hadn't asked for visitors. But Naomi came anyway. Not for closure. Not for vengeance. For Jaden. He stood beside her, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers he'd picked from outside. Naomi had told him the truth. Not all of it, but enough. That Eleanor was his grandmother. That she had made mistakes. That sometimes people don't know how to love. Until it's too late. When Eleanor opened her eyes and saw them, she didn't speak. At first, she just stared. And then, her eyes softened. Not from weakness. From something rarer. Regret. Naomi gently nudged Jaden forward. He walked up to the bed, placed the flowers on the table, and looked her in the eye. "My daddy told me you liked roses," he said quietly. Eleanor blinked, and a tear slipped down her cheek. Jaden hesitated, then reached out and took her hand. "If Daddy was here, would he forgive you?" Eleanor swallowed hard. Her voice cracked like old glass. "I don't know," she whispered, "but I hope you will." Jaden didn't answer. He just nodded slowly. Then Naomi leaned in and said softly, "You lost a son. I lost a partner. But we both have Jaden now. And maybe that's enough." As they turned to leave, Eleanor squeezed the boy's hand one last time. And for the first time in her life, she said nothing. Because sometimes, silence is the only truth left to give. 2 years later, the old library on 12th and Jefferson in Southeast D.C. was no longer just a forgotten building with broken windows and peeling paint. It had been reborn. Now, it stood tall with a sleek new sign above the doors. The Miles Legacy Lab, a community AI center. It wasn't just a tribute. It was a revolution. Naomi had used her settlement funds, every penny not needed for Jaden's future, to build something that didn't exist when she was a kid. A place where young minds from underserved neighborhoods could access tech, training, and mentors without needing to know the right people or wear the right zip code. Inside, the center buzzed with energy. Kids as young as 6 sat in front of glowing screens, learning Python, building mini robots, and coding games with mentors from MIT and Howard University. Jaden, now 7, was one of them. Not above them, not apart from them, but right there with them. He taught weekend workshops called Truth in Tech, where he asked questions like, "What would you build if it could never be used to hurt anyone?" Naomi watched from the doorway some days, hands folded, heart full. She wasn't trying to change the entire world, just a corner of it. One line of code, one curious kid at a time. And in that space, where a child once silenced had now become a teacher, the Bishop name found redemption not through power, but through purpose. Legacy isn't about whose name is on the building. It's about who has the courage to build something that outlives them. Eleanor Bishop built an empire. But in the end, it was Naomi Carter, once overlooked, underestimated, and silenced, who built something greater. A future where truth mattered more than power, and where a child like Jaden could dream without limits. We often think legacy is about bloodlines, or titles, or billion-dollar valuations. But the truth? Legacy is what we leave in the hearts of others. It's the children we raise, the lives we lift, the voices we choose to amplify when the world tells us to be quiet. Jaden didn't ask to be the face of a movement. He just asked to be seen. And Naomi, she didn't fight for a payout. She fought for recognition, for fairness, for love. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all, that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stand up for someone the world would rather forget. So if this story moved you, even just a little, don't let it end here. Drop a comment below. Tell us what you would have done. Have you ever been dismissed, pushed aside, told you didn't belong? Let your story be heard. And if you believe in second chances, in truth over silence, and in building better legacies, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder. You don't have to be born into power to change the world. You just have to be brave enough to claim your place in it.